Welcome back to the Self-Esteem and Confidence Mindset with me, Johnny Pardo. So today I've got a guest episode again, following the successful previous episodes I've done. Today's guest is Terry. Terry's a friend of mine, and we met through personal development through a group actually called Awaken, which was a spiritual psychology workshop. But I had the opportunity and privilege of meeting many good people through there, such as Terry. Terry is about to start a job at UE, a university in Bristol, and he's going to be a lecturer there on forensics, which he knows a fair bit about. But he's actually got a story around addiction, and quite a story to tell us today. And Terry has managed to turn that around for his life. So today, Terry's going to be telling us a little bit about what he felt whilst he was struggling, and actually how he overcame it, and now how he feels about himself and being free of the addiction. And he actually is looking to help as many people as possible with that. And some of you might be listening thinking, I know someone, or that might be me. So hopefully Terry can give you some value today. So welcome, Terry.
Thank you, Johnny. Thank you for the intro. And you're right, someone out there may be in need of help somewhere. And it wasn't until I heard people speak up about addiction that I was able to kind of confront my own addiction and seek help. So it's important to get that out there.
Brilliant. So yeah, it's really good getting people aware of that, and yourself of doing that. So before we sort of go into the questions and the conversation today, I've obviously introduced you a little bit, but do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, from you and your story a bit?
Yeah, of course. That's why we're here, isn't it? Get the story out there. Well, what I'll do is I'll start at the beginning and show you how I kind of came into addiction. As we go through it, you can just ask questions as and when you feel necessary. But, you know, I never set out to be a drug addict. That wasn't my goal. That wasn't my destination. I didn't dream about that. I dreamed of being a footballer, or a singer, or an athlete, or something like that, as little boys do. But an addict definitely wasn't on the cards. And then over the years, I've kind of really dissected my childhood and looked at things and thought, why did I end up like that? But, you know, I can, and I will in a minute. I'll tell you about the first time I got high. Yeah, but because, as you know, the groups we've been in, you've already mentioned it. I've done some work, and I kind of found out where that stuff stems from, right? And many people in addiction can trace back to some kind of trauma in your childhood. Yeah, and trauma comes at all different levels. You know, but for me, it was as simple as, you know, I was 5 years old when I went to my primary school. It was the first time I was removed from the safety of my my family, my loving family, my parents, my younger brother. You know, as you're brought up and nurtured and cherished and moulded in love. And I went to this new school, and my primary teacher, the first experience outside of my family home. And unfortunately for me, she turned out to be a vile, really aggressive, overbearing, dominant tyrant of a woman. And she kind of ruled that classroom with fear. You know, I can remember now, just as little kids, you know, we're 5, you know, my daughter's 6 now. I look at her and I just think she's just tiny and I want to protect her, you know. And then I think back to when we're 5 and we're there in that classroom and this teacher is just screaming and smacking stuff and stern face, and we're petrified. And she used to kind of single people out, you know, what's 8 times 4, you know, how do you spell this, and such and such. And it used to put me under so much pressure, and I was consumed with fear all the time going into that kind of environment. And you know, I developed a twitch, like a little tick that I kind of gave myself. And at the time I was wetting myself a lot, and I used to wear shorts because, you know, it was just this fear. It's the only way I can explain it. And my parents kind of knew something was going on because they'd mentioned it. You know, why is he coming? Why has he got the twitch? Why is he in the shorts all the time? You know, and then my turn came. You know, and I was singled out and I was dug out in the classroom, and I made a mistake and I didn't know what 8 times 4 was, and I panicked, and she dragged me up to the front of that classroom, and she just slapped me. She's just slapping my legs, smacking my bum in front of the whole classroom, and I'm just there as a 5-year-old child screaming and crying. You know, and it can be something as simple as that. And what she done in that moment, yeah, she instilled something into me that has run throughout my life up until this point, and that was shame. Yeah, at that moment, I was consumed with shame. Brené Brown explains it the best. You know, she says the difference between guilt and shame is guilt is I did something wrong. Shame is I am wrong. Guilt is I did something bad. Shame is I am bad. So that's what I had inside me all the time. I am bad. I am wrong because of what happened in that classroom. So that set me on a path throughout my life that, you know, I was riddled with fear, yeah, consumed with shame, hate being shown up in front of groups of people, and hate making mistakes. And that was it, you know, and that just made me very awkward as a child. And then I kind of covered that up with trying to achieve to get people to notice me, you know. But if I can like just jump forward to when I was 13, I know that's quite a big jump, right? So I just want to show the difference that from that fear through a relatively confused childhood, but quite a positive one, yeah. Then at the age of 13, I suppose, when you kind of come to the age of puberty, all our schools, our middle schools, we all left and we combined into one big school. And at that point, I just remember feeling really awkward in my own skin. I just never felt entirely comfortable with myself. I was continually looking at other people and trying to compare myself to them and see how I could fit in, see how I could be part of, you know. And instead of kind of trying to do things to get to get noticed, you know, I started to do things for notoriety instead, yeah. And that seemed to kind of fulfill something for me. And it was around that time that I went out with a couple of friends, and they was older than me, and they said, you know, should we go for a drink? And I said, yeah. And I'd kind of been introduced to alcohol with through my parents, but this was my first time on my own. You know, I'd had the odd baby sham at Christmas when you're younger, as you used to do back in the day. But we went out and we drank Thunderbirds. I don't know if you know what Thunderbirds are. People that do. You used to have a red label or a blue label of Thunderbirds, and I just remember drinking that, just downing it as quick as I can, a litre of that.
At 13?
I ended up, say again?
At 13?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I ended up paralytic. I remember I fell down a hole and I smashed all my leg up. So I was limping. We ended up nicking a couple of cars that night and just driving around, you know, driving up to the school and knocking down the goalposts and the tennis courts and stuff like that. And then I woke up the next morning and I had one of those hangovers from hell. You know, the ones if you move just an inch, you're violently ill.
Oh yeah.
One of those, and my head was banging around my friend's house, and I've got my head over the toilet, and I'm just throwing up and throwing up. If I just moved an inch, I'd be throwing up. And I looked up and I could see my friends, older friends, and they're all there kind of like jeering and laughing and egging me on. And I just remember in that moment, I just remember thinking to myself, I cannot wait to get drunk again. And from that moment, that kind of set the tone for my whole using, because it was about seeking oblivion, and the consequences meant absolutely nothing. And that's it. That's all I was kind of chasing from that moment on.
Okay. No, it sounds you know, really appreciate you sharing the early years, especially when you're 5 years old and you're in class, and then obviously that jump ahead to 13 and you're drinking. When you were drinking, then what did you feel like you couldn't wait to start drinking again because of the approval you were getting from it, from the other people?
Well, it was alcohol gave me confidence.
Okay.
It made me comfortable in my own skin. And it
Mm,
wasn't approval as such, it was notoriety. I got noticed. It was like, oh, Terry will do that.
yes.
You know, some of my friends, one of my friends' mums used to say, oh, here comes Silly Socks. It was a nickname I picked up because I'd always do the stupid thing, you know. I'd always be egged on and jeered on. And when I'd done it, I kind of got that notoriety. Approval, possibly, acceptance, definitely became part of something, you know. But alcohol only sufficed for so long because everyone else started drinking and everyone else got to that level. And then I didn't stand out anymore. I kind of blended back into the crowd and started to feel that uncomfortableness again. So I needed to kind of seek the next thing that would soothe the soul.
Okay, and did that lead you? Was that next thing what led you onto the drug addiction?
Yeah. So they often talk about a progression in drug use, you know, and there's kind of some people believe there's some kind of hierarchy to drugs, but it's not my experience. My experience was I tried a few things and very, very young. The town where I come from, you know, there wasn't much employment, there wasn't much help for addicts. It was quite a mundane existence down there for me. And I just kind of jumped straight on and into heroin at a very, very young age. But when I first took heroin, it changed everything. You know, it was like a romance with heroin. It soothed everything. You know, the reason people take drugs is to numb a pain. There's an internal pain going on. There's some turmoil. There's some distress. There's some despair. There's something going on. Some unrest that we can't. At that time, we don't know how to live with or how to deal with it. You know, when I took heroin, that was it. It numbed everything. It quietened everything out. It soothed everything. It's like a pacifier, like a dummy. You take that and you're back in the womb. There's no problems. Nothing matters. Just relax. Consequences are gone. I didn't need to stand out in a crowd. I didn't need approval. I didn't need significance. I didn't need certainty. I didn't need anything because I felt complete and I felt whole. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a phrase that says people aren't addicted to the drugs themselves, they're addicted to running away from reality or their real feelings. So I guess does that resonate with you?
Yeah, I've been listening to Gabor Mate, and he says all addiction stems from trauma. But he also says that heroin in itself and alcohol in itself is not addictive. Okay, that's not my experience. I know he's a renowned expert in addiction, but that's not my experience. I was physically addicted to alcohol. I was physically addicted to heroin. I was physically addicted to benzodiazepines. I was physically addicted to these drugs. I was also mentally addicted to them. Yeah, but is that the reason I continue to use them? No. The reason I was using drugs in the first place, that's what I need to go back to, is because I was trying to numb something that previously I didn't know how to deal with.
The shame, as you mentioned in the early years. So going back to that, because I was going to ask them that, but I thought what you were talking about previously when it led on to the drug addiction was quite interesting where we're going with that. But just going back to when you were 5 years old, how was the rest of your school life or childhood after that teacher? I mean, were the other teachers better, or were you stuck with that teacher for a while?
No, luckily, that was just, she was my first teacher. We had her for a year and then we moved on. Thank God, you know what I mean? But it was enough to scar me. Through the rest of that school, all the teachers I encountered were decent teachers. They were there for the students. Um, After leaving that classroom, as a student, I was quite capable. I enjoyed school to a certain degree. Um, I tried my best in there. I done what I could. But I remember when I moved up to my middle school, I found myself and started getting like into sports, like captain of the football team. Used to win a lot on sports day. We had this little like house teams, and I was like a school prefect thing for that as well. So I was doing well, and there was one teacher. His name was Mr. Greenfield, and on parents' evening, he said to my parents, "Whatever Terry puts his mind to, he can achieve." Right, and my parents told me that in later years, but it's always resonated with me because at that moment, when I was in his classroom, that was when I was at my best. And that was just before we moved up to the last school where everything's kind of went wrong. So going from that shame, after a few years, I managed to semblance some kind of normality and some kind of happiness and some kind of joy within my life, only for it to turn again. So schooling was a positive thing for me after that initial horrifying experience.
Yeah. And that initial experience, was it something you thought about regularly as you went through school, or was it something you've forgotten until you actually started searching for that moment again that you rediscovered that was the trigger?
I've been oblivious to it my whole life. I turned 8 years clean in September, just gone. Total
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, free from all drugs, all mind-altering substances.
Brilliant.
It wasn't until I was about 7 years clean in recovery that I had that realization that my whole life was run by shame, and I regressed back through my childhood to pinpoint the actual time and place, and I don't lay all the blame there. I was raised, things happen there. When you become an addict, the consequences are pretty harsh. So you're constantly having the finger pointed at you. You're constantly being ostracized from society. So you're kind of getting this stamp on you all the time that kind of agrees with the shame, that reinforces the shame. So there was lots of times that shame was reinforced throughout my childhood, through friendships, through bullying, through partnerships, through relationships, through whatever it was reinforced over and over and over and over again. And that's why, I need to take these drugs. I need to numb this pain. But I didn't know it was going on at the time.
So what kind of things were you, when you weren't on the drugs, you mentioned about sometimes you physically felt you needed it, but mentally, what are the kind of things you were saying to yourself or thinking about yourself when you weren't on the drugs? How did you feel about yourself as a person?
Well, it was always about the drugs, but there was times when I managed to kind of get a little amount of clean time. I'd go through withdrawals, cold turkey as it's known, and it was the voice would just come alive in my head and just would not stop speaking. Just every situation I was in, it would belittle me and bring me down, and always comparing against others. And I always put other people on a pedestal and I put me below them, And when you kind of compare yourself to others and you place yourself lower, you kind of come from a place of envy or jealousy, and that rapidly turns into resentment. And when you're resentful, you're kind of bitter, you hate the world, you're just shut off. And it really feeds into that low self-worth and that low self-esteem and that inner voice that just says, I'm not enough, I'm worthless, just a piece of shit. And that's the kind of language that was going on constantly in the background. So, it stands to reason I didn't stay clean for very long. It was easier to use to kind of quieten the voice up.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And as we were talking about, sometimes those voices, those harsh voices, can go away temporarily. But obviously, it's interesting to get your perspective on the kind of the belittling voice, as you mentioned. Then, so thanks for sharing that. In terms of what it costs you being on the drugs, what kind of things do you feel like it costs you in terms of relationships, or like, I'm talking not just romantic, but like family, friends, and kind of general jobs? What kind of things did it cost you?
Well, it cost me 20 years of my life. Gone, never to get back. It cost me every single job I've ever had. I would either be sacked, not turn up, or just not go in. It cost me every romantic relationship I've ever been in. Everyone always left me. It cost me near enough all my friendships from school growing up. There's only one or two people that stuck about. As for family members, there's a few that stuck about, but the majority of people, they distanced themselves from me because I made myself very isolated. But I think there was times people would see me and they'd cross the road. They'd get a little bit embarrassed. Oh, here he is. You know what I mean? He's going to ask for £1 again, 20p, whatever it is. It cost me my self-respect, my dignity. It just sapped everything from me, because as I said, after that initial thing in the classroom, the rest of my schooling, I was bright-eyed, charismatic, energetic, loving, good morals, good principles, because I was raised well. All that was just sapped from me and taken from me. I didn't have much left within my soul, really. Hence, the futile suicide attempts that would kind of rear their heads every now and then.
Yeah. Okay. No, thank you for sharing that. And definitely, when it's interesting when you were talking about when you were 5 years old, you see, it was quite a reasonably happy childhood up till then, before you went to the school. You said, and kind of like a nice background, the first time away from these people you're comfortable with. It's interesting because sometimes we think, hang on, how have I got low self-esteem in the instance of this sort of podcast, or lack of confidence, or I got into this addictive or bad behavior? I've got a very good, early childhood. I've got a lovely family, and the same was with me. I've got the amazing, wonderful parents, and amazing little sister. But for me, when I was 2.5 and I had a baby brother, sadly, who passed away, and my parents had to leave me for a bit, it was a bit like that child at the time was thinking, hang on, what's going on? Have I done something wrong? I'm not lovable. Am I not lovable? Am I not enough? Whilst logically, obviously, as adults now, we'd know better, but those beliefs. So it's always interesting to sort of hear how different people's beliefs shape. And I think that's really, really given, some people some value in terms of how behaviors can develop just from early experiences, even if, on the outside, we would have had perhaps a nice family life. Traumas can be in any form, as you mentioned.
Well, what happens, Johnny, is drugs take over your life. And I became powerless over drugs themselves, and you have this massive debate that goes on, and people say, oh, it's a choice. They choose to live that way. Yeah. But when my mum is sitting in front of me and she is absolutely broken and sobbing and weeping and pleading for me to tell her what to do, and I can't muster any words to help her, I can only manipulate that situation to get more money to use drugs. That's not a choice. I don't choose to put my parents in pain. I was caught up in something that had a power over me I couldn't get out of at that time. The initial choice to use a drug laid with me. When I was caught up in it, it just takes over. But there's like of all the people that use drugs, you know, we see the addict and we kind of link the addict to drug use, yeah? And the general opinion or appearance of the drug addict is the drug addict that sits in the shop doorway begging for money, or the one that's always in and out of prison, or the one that's prostituting himself on the street, yeah? But drug use is more, it's throughout society, but 90% of people that take drugs can take drugs okay and can take them successfully. They can take them every now and then recreationally and just leave them. They may take them for a stint of time, may even form a habit and then stop. Yeah, but it's kind of statistics have shown that there's 10% of them people that don't have that ability, and I believe I fall into that bracket.
Yeah, okay. No, that's really interesting stats. In that, obviously, more people. It surprised us, I guess. Some people who we know that actually might take, you know, drugs occasionally, but the fact, you know, that they don't fall into that 10% is why they're kind of, it doesn't always appear on the surface, but it's, you know, really useful to hear your perspective, and those stats are really interesting as well. So talking about your recovery a little bit, and you know, you mentioned you've been 8 years clean and you didn't get the realization for I think it was 7 years into that you mentioned. What how did you start becoming clean? What kind of triggered you off for that road to recovery?
I was in a treatment centre, and I went to 12-step treatment centre, and I got clean, and I managed to get like a month or so under my belt. And at that time, my brother was living in France, and I thought I'd fixed myself. I thought I'd cured myself and everything was good, because I thought, you know, physically we recover very quickly. Mentally and emotionally it takes a bit longer. And I thought, right, I'll go over to see him. And I went over there, and we have this saying in recovery that the first one does the damage. Yeah, one's too many, 1,000 is never enough. But I only went, so in France I have something called a demi, which is a half a beer.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, I'll have, out of sight, out of mind, I'll have half a beer. And I drank that, and I ended up getting absolutely paralytic. I ended up hitting the doctors for a load of benzos, a load of tablets, because I'd lived in France for many years. I knew how to kind of manipulate the doctors. And then I don't remember flying back from France. Yeah, I remember walking into my dry house, being accused of using, and in 2 days I was homeless, begging outside Luton train station to try and raise some money to get drugs. And it was at that point that I realised, right, you're the problem. You are the problem, and you can't use drugs anymore. Because then I was using the heroin. I knew it was against the law. Yeah, I knew what I was doing was wrong. And because I was constantly trying to fight off withdrawal symptoms, I thought that's why I continued to use. But it's when I kind of got my head around the fact that you can't drink alcohol either. Every time you drink alcohol, you can't stop. And I kind of got it in that moment. I used for 5 more years, knowing that every time I used against my will. Yeah, and it brought me to a place where I went to my parents' house in France. I was living in France at the time, and I took myself there, and with another promise of getting clean. And while I was there, I'd come to the end of my tether, and I just remember I tried to take my own life there. I took all the tablets I had and drank a bottle of gin. And when I woke up the next morning, I was just thinking, hey, you can't even do that right. It's just useless. I just thought, right, something has got to change. Something has got to shift. You know, and when I was back in England, I started the process of trying to engage with the drug services that have been helping me for years, since I was about 18 years old. But this time I was using them to get some, not to get another script or to get on a day program, so I stayed out of trouble with the police, but to get me to a goal where I can clean myself up. And they worked with me for over a year. And they finally got me down to a treatment centre in Weston-super-Mare, which is where I live now. And that was a process of me beginning to get clean. And what I've done is I went into another treatment centre, and this time I listened. This time I listened a bit at what was going on, and I engaged and I worked through some of that stuff. And whilst I was in there, there was some support workers that used to work there, and they used to, they'd speak to us as clients, and they'd kind of give us a bit of advice or just have a chat with us, tell their stories, give their experience. And there was something about these people when they was talking that made my ears prick up, and I'd look at them and think they got something about them. They're telling me stories of things they've done very similar to me. They've been to the places I've been to. They've been to worse places than I've been to, but they're clean. But more importantly than that, they're happy. They had like a glow about them, an energy, and they'd communicate and converse and laugh and be well presented. And it was very attractive. And through conversations, I realised that they went to 12-step fellowship, and that's what I'd done. I come out of that treatment centre and I went to a 12-step fellowship, and I kind of found my way in there and managed to kind of get a 12-step program behind me, and that's been the basis of my recovery ever since.
Brilliant. It's really interesting to hear that you tried once and then it didn't work, but then actually you found something that worked, and perhaps the thing that inspired you was someone with a similar story, and someone listening now might be able to relate to what you're saying. So that's really, really good. And as human beings, we can relate so much to stories. So no, that's great news that you were able to connect with them so much. And I guess that was the 8 years ago, that mark. Yeah.
It's been it's transformed my life, Johnny. Honestly, I can't explain it. I mean, what I've just told you is just snippets of my drug use. If I can sum it up, I was in internal pain. I used to cry when I was by myself. I used to plead and long for death on a daily basis. I was frightened to walk outside of my front door. It was just existing day in, day out. It never changed. I've come to this 12-step fellowship. It was suggested that I get a sponsor. I got a sponsor. We worked through the programs. I had a look at myself. Remember, I've just done treatment. I've just done 6 months in another treatment centre. So I've got this stuff where I've just looked at myself. I'm using a 12-step program to really kind of look at the way we believe in 12-step program, the disease concept of addiction. And I'm looking at that and what kind of fuels me, where does it stem from, what's rooted into my subconscious, and I was able to look at my shortcomings, defects, and transform myself as from a frightened little boy into a man. Yeah. And it's, not, I went through the steps pretty quickly, but it didn't mean it was all finished. It's been an 8-year process to get me to this point. And in that 8-year process, many, many things have happened. I can list you off loads of things that I've done which shows someone that's got their life together, someone that's moving forward, someone that's got dreams, goals, and ambitions again.
And how do you feel now about yourself? I mean, how do you talk to yourself as opposed to when you used to belittle yourself?
Well, I tried to turn everything into a positive, everything I do into a positive. My fiance will probably say I'm still moany and moody at times, but I don't, it's not, I'm not perfect. I don't seek perfection, but the language I tell myself now is different to what I used to. There was no hope before. There was no hope at all. And then today there is hope, it's that gentle, self-soothing talk, that, come on, Terry, you can do this. You've got this. You're capable of doing this. You've proved this time and time again throughout your recovery. I have this tendency to approach many things in my life with doubt fear and worry, but I know where it comes from, and it happens, but I'm able to challenge that with my thinking and do it anyway. Because if I held myself in that place, and you know this, you teach this stuff, yeah, I would always be in that place. I would never do anything and never achieve anything in my life. I would stay stagnant, yeah, and it would just feed into that shame that I am no good. You know, I am bad, I'm no good, you know, I'm not enough. Yeah. And then I will make that prophecy come true. You know, but today it's totally different. I can give you examples. Do you want examples of how my life's different today?
Yeah, just give a couple. That'd be fantastic.
Well, I've re-educated myself. So, you know, I got kicked out of school just before our exams for shooting someone with an air rifle. And then I tried to go back into college, in Canterbury College, and resit my GCSEs. I think I did. I think I scraped a couple of GCSEs together. And that was the extent of my education. And then I've kind of cleaned up. And after a year of being clean, I've gone into college. I've done an access course, and I've gone on to do a degree in forensic science, and then a master's in advanced forensic analysis at the University of the West of England.
And tough stuff. That's quite tricky stuff. So well done on
that. Yeah. Considering that it's quite a deep science degree, and I wasn't expecting it to be. And my biology and chemistry weren't that great, and still isn't top notch today, but you know, there's progress been made. And then what I've done is I signed up for a PhD as well. So currently I'm doing a PhD in bladder cancer and prostate cancer detection. We're looking at a non-invasive way to detect it, you know, because it does involve a lot of poking and prodding where in places people don't want to be poked and prodded. So I'm just completing that at the moment, finishing that off. And like I said, well, you mentioned at the beginning, I start a job on Monday with the forensic team at UE, University of West England, the very same lecturers that taught me. I'll now be a forensic lecturer there, and I'll be teaching others, you know, and this is within 8 years. And that involved that change of mindset. You know, the fear, the worry, the doubt was there. It's been there the whole way through. But I've challenged it. I said, you can do this. And I've continually produced results. And every time I produce a result, it gives me trust in the process. You know, throughout that period, I won a national award for forensic science. And it was given to me, it was presented to me by the Chartered Society of Forensic Sciences. Brian Rankin, man, you can check him out. He was the one that presented the award to me. And I was told, if we put you in for this, Terry, you will not win it, yeah, because you didn't get a first, yeah, because academically I was not the most gifted student on my course. And I said, it don't matter. You've nominated me for this. That's fantastic. And I went back to that classroom when I was 5 and just, you know, up yours. And I went back to that classroom with Mr. Greenfield and thought, thank you for everything you taught me, because it was based on effort. It was the most meritorious student, and the teacher wrote, the lecturer wrote, and we believe merit is judged on effort, and Terry had put in more effort than any other student. And because they knew my past, you know, and I was managed to secure it. And so, you know, so there you go. There's good evidence of that. I've also managed to, I've been in a relationship for, it will be 8 years this December. You know, I've never ever held down a relationship for any length of time that was healthy in any sort of way throughout my whole life. It's the first time I managed to kind of live in something that functions healthily, you know. And she's now my fiance, who's due to get married this year, and that obviously didn't transpire due to COVID, etc. Yeah. So we're putting that off till next year, and we've got a beautiful little girl called Sophia, who you know, is my duty to raise and look after. You know, 8 years ago I couldn't even look after myself. I didn't really wash. All my clothes were dirty. My hair was long. I didn't eat properly. I mean, I share this when I do talks for addiction. I had a cat litter tray full of cat shit and no cat. Even the cat had left me. It was just me. Just couldn't look after myself, had no electric, had dust sheets up for curtains. And now today I'm put in this position to raise this seraphic beauty, to develop her and mold her and try and steer her away from the classrooms that I was in, into the life that's possible and potential for her.
That's awesome. And like Mr. Greenfield said, Terry can achieve anything he sets his mind to. So you've definitely taken that philosophy forward. So
I also tracked him down as well, and I've contacted him recently.
Oh, did you? Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I told him that. I told him my parents said this, and I told him my story and a bit of my history, and he was really touched. And he said, "Thank you ever so much for sharing that with me." And he's kind of been behind me because he's a teacher and he's still teaching today. And I told him I was going for this role as a forensic lecturer. And he's kind of been behind me and supporting me to kind of go for the role. And I told him, I said, "I've got it. I secured the job." He said, "Well done."
That's brilliant. It's great, those kind of people out there who kind of really lift you up in those times. But it sounds an incredible I was going to mix up words and story, Terry. I was just going to say, kind of as you covered a lot today, which has really, really been helpful. What would be your, say, top 3 tips for someone coming out of drug addiction?
The things I found most important myself is take inventory, find a community, and help others. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that taking inventory is taking personal inventory. Yeah, you're keeping my side of the road clean. I've got to continually look at what I do wrong. I can't change you, Johnny, as a person. It says like we're powerless over people. I don't know if that's the case. If there's someone irritating in my life, I can remove them, but I can't change what you do. I can only change what I do, which may change the situation. So I take a personal inventory all day long as I go throughout the day, and I look for where I'm being resentful, where I'm being fearful, where I'm being dishonest, where I'm being judgmental, where I'm being opinionated, and I try my best to counteract those defects. Yeah. I still get it wrong. I'm still learning. I'm only 8 years old. So take inventory. Second one is find a community. Finding a community of like-minded people is paramount to my recovery. There's a book out by Johann Hari called Chasing the Scream, and he talks about the war on drugs, and it's a brilliant book. He describes it excellently, but in there he talks about this bloke called Bruce Alexander, and he talks about an experiment he does with mice, and he's got mice in a cage, and he feeds them morphine, and they become addicted to the morphine. And then what they do is they create a second cage called Rat Park, and it's got everything in there. Yeah, so you've got the mice that was in solitude drinking the morphine, and they take them out and put them in this new cage. They give them the option of the morphine or normal water, and they tend to go to the water most of the time. Yeah, you'll have to look at the experiment itself, but basically what it's saying is the community itself can help drug addiction. And I truly believe that. I've tried to do it myself many times, and I've relapsed and relapsed and relapsed, and I see it so often. So take inventory, find community, and the last one is to help others. Yeah, if you kind of go through anything like I've been through, or not like I've been through, every individual has their own challenges, but if you overcome something in your life, help other people to do it. Share that experience, give back, see if you can help someone else transform their lives. And this is what you do, Johnny. You've done that. You've looked at your life. We had a discussion the other day. You was in a job going one way, you changed it, and now you're getting a lot of airtime. You're putting yourself out there, and all you're doing is you're giving tidbits, experience, feedback of how people can change their lives. And there's scientific research that shows when you help people, your dopamine levels raise. Yeah. And for the addicts, what we're chasing is that dopamine. That's why
Yeah.
heroin's called dope. We're trying to get them dopamine levels up, and we're just chasing that, chasing it. And the funny thing is, I can find that. All I've got to do is help other people.
Yeah.
So take inventory, find community, and help others.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. I love the point on helping others. And when you're sort of not helping others, you can kind of get caught in your own head an awful lot, whilst it kind of gets more into your heart, I feel, and kind of feels like you're not so self-centered and therefore chasing things all the time. So definitely a great point, as were the other two. So appreciate those, Terry. That's been really helpful as per your whole interview today. So really appreciate that. You've obviously, got loads and loads to share, and you obviously educated yourself on the topic, and as well as forensics, which I must say is very, very impressive. And including a master's and now doing a PhD, obviously in addition on bladder cancer. But if people want to get in contact with you or find out more about you or anything you might find useful to share, what would you suggest?
Yeah, I wrote down a few resources here. The first thing people need to do if they've got a problem with drugs in any way, and that includes alcohol, it includes prescription pills, cannabis, is seek help. Right? There's a vast. You've got the internet. There's loads of stuff on there which can help you. You've got your basic stuffs like, pardon me, like Frank, which is there for drug use, and you've got something called Smart Meetings. But the place I usually direct people to is a 12-step program. You've got Narcotics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous. If you go online, each one of those fellowships should have a national helpline. You can phone that national helpline and someone will get you to a meeting, or they'll give you someone to speak to so you can share your experience. And what you'll be doing is you'll be sharing your experience with someone that has been through it. So not professionals in any way. It will be another cocaine addict, or it will be another drug addict, or it will be another alcoholic that you can talk to, But if 12-step fellowships are not for you, if you've tried them before, there's Frank, there's Smart Meetings, there's NHS do stuff on drug addiction and places you can get help. There's a multitude of wealth and knowledge out there that you can use and find that that you can source to help you in some way.
Brilliant. Okay, no, that's really useful. And what we'll do is also I'll put this in the description. So for you listeners or watchers, this will be on YouTube and podcast. I'll put this in the description as well, so people can have a look at a couple of these links as well.
And then, and if anyone wants to get in contact with me, because you can sit here and listen to podcasts like I do and think, I'll never get in touch with them people. But if you really are suffering in some way with addiction, and you can get in touch with me, and I can help in any way I will, right? So you can get in touch with me through 11th Element Recovery at gmail.com. That's all lowercase letters. 11th Element Recovery at gmail.com. There's a Facebook page I've set up called The Culture of Change. It's a young page I've set up. I've just putting stuff up there. I'm hoping it kind of expand and be a resource for people to use. And also, I'm there on Facebook under Terry Devine. But if they go to your site, your Facebook page, become a member of that, they can find me in there.
Yeah.
And then I just wanted to throw this in, if it's all right, Johnny.
Yeah, of course. You said so.
Because I mentioned to you before about fundraiser I'm doing, didn't I?
Yeah.
Through the process of getting clean within this last 8 years, 3 years ago, we had another child, me and my fiance. It was a little boy called Jacob. He was like quite a strong, burly boy. And there was complications with the labour and the birth, and he was breached at birth, and he was starved of oxygen for over 20 minutes. He had something called hyperischemic encephalopathy, which means his brain was starved of oxygen, and he was really poorly, the most poorest baby on the ward. And unfortunately, at 5 days old, I had to hold him in my arms, and my missus held on to me, and we let him have a go at breathing by himself. And I don't even think he took a breath, and he died right there in my arms. And this is 3 years ago. At that point, if I'd had that previous mindset that we spoke about, I could have given in. I could have used that as the ultimate excuse. I think people would have even let me have that. You know, you don't get much worse than this. But what we've done, we've managed to turn it around, and we managed to keep his name alive. And each year we do a fundraiser for him, and we hold a remembrance service every January for people that have lost children. But obviously this year that's not been possible. So we set up a big fundraiser next year. So myself and two friends, we're going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro next year, September 2021. So it's a massive feat. It's a massive ordeal. It's going to be a great adventure, and we're raising money for Cots for Tots and Bristol and Sands. The two charities which are pivotal in the upkeep of my son Jacob when he was in the NICU unit at St Michael's Hospital in Bristol. So that you can find that under the hashtag honouring Jacob, yeah. Or if you find your way to my Facebook page through maybe your site or just on Facebook, yeah, you can go there. There's a link there. You know, if you can't donate, then please share the page. Let's get the page out there. Let's raise as much money as we can, and let's help those families that have lost children, or their children are poorly and in intensive care units, and see what we can do to kind of support these people, you know, and ease their pain.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that as well, Terry. So we'll certainly be referencing that in the description as well. So anyone listening who wants to contribute to that, please obviously have a look at that. It'll be in the description, but thank you, Terry, for that. Was there anything else to add, Terry, from those that you wanted to mention?
That I can think of.
Okay, brilliant. So, well, I really appreciate you coming on and then sharing so much, Terry, all those you know, very personal things in order to help people potentially who might be struggling with any of the issues you've mentioned or something similar. So I really appreciate your time, and thank you very much for being with me on this podcast and video tonight.
Cheers. Thanks for having us on, Johnny. It's always great to see you and hear you. You're only down the road, and hopefully we can meet up after all this is after we're out of lockdown, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, thanks, Terry, and thank you for everyone listening today. Catch you soon.